Welcome to a quiet journey through the hidden world of trees. Let yourself settle in, take a slow breath, and release it. There's nowhere you need to be right now, nothing you need to do. Just listen, and let these gentle truths about trees carry you softly towards sleep. Close your eyes if you haven't already, and imagine a forest. Any forest. It doesn't matter which one. Perhaps it's a place you've been, or perhaps it's somewhere that exists only in your mind. See the trees standing tall, their branches reaching upward, their roots reaching down. Every single one of them has a story. And tonight, we're going to hear those stories, starting at the very beginning. We begin at the very beginning, with a single seed falling through the air, spinning slowly, catching the light, drifting on the breeze. So small, so light, and yet, inside that tiny package is everything needed to become a giant. But here's something you might not know. Most seeds never become trees. This is one of nature's quiet truths, whispered in every forest. A seed might land on stone, where no roots can dig in. It might fall into a stream and be carried away. It might be eaten by a squirrel, or a mouse, or buried too deep to ever see sunlight again. Or it might simply wait, in the wrong place, in the wrong season, with not quite enough water, or too much shade. Survival is a long shot. Think about this for a moment. Out of thousands of seeds that fall from a single tree in a single year, perhaps only one or two will ever grow tall enough to touch the sky. Maybe none at all. The odds are impossibly small, vanishingly small, and yet, here we are, surrounded by forests. Every tree you've ever seen, every oak and pine and maple and willow, beat those odds. Every trunk, every branch, every leaf, is a small miracle. A survivor. Let that sink in, as you breathe slowly, in and out. Every tree is unlikely. Every tree is a triumph. Some trees protect their seeds with armor. They've learned, over millions of years, that the world is dangerous for something so small and vulnerable. So they wrap their seeds in toxic coats, bitter to the taste, filled with chemicals that make animals sick. Or they encase them in shells as hard as rock, impenetrable, unyielding. These are not meant to be easy. A cherry pit, smooth and impossibly hard. A walnut shell that requires a hammer to crack. An acorn's tough skin, leathery and bitter. The seed inside is precious. It contains the genetic blueprint of the parent tree, the potential for decades or centuries of growth, the promise of shade and shelter and oxygen. And the tree guards it well. Only the most persistent creatures, the ones with the strongest jaws or the cleverest tricks, or the patient passage of time itself, can unlock what's hidden inside. And sometimes, that's exactly what the tree wants. A waiting period. A test. A guarantee that the seed will only open when the time is right. Breathe with me now, slow and steady, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Feel yourself sinking deeper into rest. But trees can't walk. They're rooted in place, fixed to one spot for their entire lives. So how do they spread? How does a tree in one valley create offspring in the next valley over, miles away, across rivers and hills it will never see? They've made a bargain with the birds. a partnership written in sugar and color. A bright red berry, a cluster of dark purple fruit, a handful of orange berries glowing against winter snow. These are invitations. Come here, the tree says. Eat me. And the birds do. They land on the branches, they peck at the fruit, they swallow it whole. The sweet flesh is their reward. But the seed inside, the seed is coated in something the bird's stomach cannot break down. It passes through, unharmed, intact, still viable. And hours later, when the bird is miles from the parent tree, perched in a completely different landscape, the seed emerges. Dropped to the ground in a neat package of fertilizer. Ready to grow. The bird has planted a forest without ever knowing it. Without ever intending it. Across valleys, over rivers, beyond mountains, trees travel on wings. They hitch rides on creatures that don't even know they're helping. Imagine that, as you drift, seeds flying through the air inside living messengers, crossing distances the parent tree could never dream of reaching. Not all trees are the same. Some have a secret, one you might never notice unless you knew to look. They exist as male and female, separate individuals. Two trees, two genders, both needed for reproduction. A holly tree heavy with red berries in December is female. She produces the fruit, she carries the seeds. But she cannot make them alone. Somewhere nearby, within the reach of wind or insects, there must be a male holly tree. He produces only pollen, never fruit, never berries. Just tiny grains of genetic material, carried on the breeze. They are two halves of a whole, rooted in different ground, sometimes standing side by side, sometimes separated by yards or even miles, connected by the wind and by bees and by butterflies that carry pollen from one to the other. Two trees, one purpose. And you might walk past them 100 times, never knowing that one could not exist without the other. Let your breathing slow even more now. Feel your body growing heavy, calm, relaxed. The oldest trees on earth, the gymnosperms, the pines and firs and spruces and redwoods, carry their seeds differently than most. Their seeds are naked. There's no fruit, no sweet flesh to tempt the birds, no colorful packaging. Just seeds sitting exposed, right out in the open, on the scales of a cone. You've seen these cones. Pine cones littering the forest floor, sticky with sap, arranged in those beautiful spiral patterns. Gymnosperm means naked seed, and these ancient trees have been doing things this way for hundreds of millions of years. Long before flowers existed, long before bees, long before birds as we know them, there were cones. Simple. Enduring. Honest. The gymnosperms were making seeds when dinosaurs walked beneath them. And they're still here, still using the same basic design, because it works. It has always worked. Some trees have found another way entirely. They've learned to clone themselves. To become immortal, in a sense. A single aspen tree sends roots spreading underground, traveling through the soil, searching. And from those roots, at certain points, new trunks rise. New trees. Except, they're not new trees at all. They're the same tree. What looks like a forest of separate individuals, dozens or hundreds of white-barked aspens standing together, is actually one organism. one ancient individual, copying itself again and again. There are aspen groves alive today, right now, that have been growing this way for thousands of years. Some scientists believe certain groves may be tens of thousands of years old. The same tree, over and over, a family that is also a self. One root system. One genetic individual. One life, expressed in many forms. Rest in that image, a forest that is one tree, individuals that are also unity. When a forest is disturbed, when fire sweeps through and clears the old growth, or when a storm tears down the ancient trees, or when humans cut and clear the land, the pioneer trees arrive first. Birch, alder, poplar. These are the opportunists. The fast growers. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They rush in while there's still open sunlight, before the slower trees can establish themselves. And here's their secret. Some of them can fake it. Most trees depend on fungi, tiny threads in the soil that attach to their roots and help them gather water and nutrients. It's a partnership, a relationship, and most trees die without it. But some pioneers can survive alone. They can pretend, just long enough to get established. They can go it alone in those early days when the soil is disturbed and the fungal networks have been destroyed. And then, slowly, as the forest heals, the fungi arrive. The partnership forms. The pioneers welcome them in. But in those crucial early days, when speed matters more than anything, the pioneers stand alone. Independent. Brave. Every tree is shaped by where it grows. A tree of a certain species, growing in a wet valley with rich soil and plenty of rain, will have broad leaves, soft and wide, drinking in the moisture, maximizing every bit of sunlight. The same species, the exact same genetic lineage, growing on a dry hillside where water is scarce and the sun beats down relentlessly, will grow smaller leaves, tougher, with a waxy coating to hold tight to every precious drop of water. Trees fine-tune their design to match the world around them. They listen to the rain, to the soil, to the air temperature and the length of the days. And they adjust. Slowly. Patiently. Perfectly. They become exactly what they need to be, in exactly the place they find themselves. No two trees are identical, because no two places are identical. Every tree began as a seed. And every seed was a long shot. But the world is full of trees. Miracles everywhere you look. Survivors, every single one. Let yourself continue to relax, deeper now, as we move into the hidden life of trees. The secret ways they sense the world, the quiet intelligence woven into wood and leaf. You don't need to think too hard about any of this. Just let the words wash over you, like a gentle stream, carrying you towards sleep. Trees are watching. They're paying attention. Not with eyes, but with something perhaps more remarkable. They're counting. Trees appear able to count days and light hours. Imagine that for a moment, a being with no brain, no neurons, no central nervous system, and yet somehow, it knows. It knows how many hours of daylight have passed. It knows when the days are getting longer, and when they're getting shorter. It can feel the difference between 12 hours of light and 13. Between 13 and 14. This is how a tree knows when to bloom, when to unfurl its leaves in spring, when to let them go in autumn. It's counting, always counting, tracking the passage of time through the changing length of daylight. Scientists call this photoperiodism, the response to day length. But you can call it what it is, a form of awareness. A tree measuring time, without a clock, without a calendar, using only the sun. Some trees need a certain number of cold days before they'll bloom. They count those too. Chill hours, they're called. The tree stands in winter, dormant, seemingly asleep, but inside, something is keeping track. 1 cold day. 2. 10. 50. And when the magic number is reached, when the tree has experienced enough winter, only then will it allow itself to wake up when spring arrives. It's a safety mechanism, preventing the tree from blooming too early, from being fooled by a warm spell in January, from opening its flowers only to have them killed by a late frost. The tree remembers how many cold days it's had. It knows when enough is enough. It counts, and it waits, and it knows. Breathe slowly with me now, in and out. Feel your body growing heavier, more relaxed, as we sink deeper into these mysteries. Trees need sleep. Yes, sleep. Just like you. Just like every animal that has ever lived. Trees rest at night. You can measure it. If you have sensitive enough instruments, you can watch a tree's branches lower slightly as darkness falls, drooping, relaxing, conserving energy. And then, when morning comes, they rise again. Lifted by the return of photosynthesis, by water pressure in the cells, by the tree waking up. But here's what's troubling. Trees can suffer from light pollution. In cities, where streetlights blaze all night, where the darkness never truly comes, trees don't sleep properly. They become confused. The constant light tells them it's still day, still time to photosynthesize, still time to grow. But their internal chemistry knows better. The hormones that regulate growth, the processes that need darkness to function properly, they're disrupted. Studies have shown that trees near streetlights lose their leaves later in autumn. They can't quite figure out when it's time to rest. They're exhausted, running on empty, pushed beyond their natural rhythms. We've given trees insomnia, and they're suffering for it. Quietly. Invisibly. But suffering nonetheless. Let that image fade now, and imagine instead a tree in true darkness, resting, breathing, sleeping under stars. Trees store memories. Not in the way you do, not in neurons or synapses, but in their very tissues. In the wood itself. When a tree experiences stress, a drought, an attack by insects, an unusually cold winter, it records that experience. It writes it down in the only language it has, the language of wood and chemistry. You can see these memories if you know where to look. A drought year shows up as a narrow ring in the trunk, thin because the tree barely grew. An attack by caterpillars might trigger the production of defensive chemicals, and those chemicals get incorporated into that year's wood, a permanent record. A frost that damaged the cambium layer, the growing tissue just beneath the bark, might create a scar that never fully heals, a mark the tree will carry for the rest of its life. But it's more than just recording. The tree uses these memories. A tree that has survived a drought, will be more conservative with water the next year. It will close its stomata, the tiny pores in its leaves, a little earlier in the day. It will grow slightly deeper roots. It has learned. The memory of stress makes it more prepared for stress in the future. This isn't metaphor. This is biochemistry. This is adaptation written in cellulose and lignin. Every tree is a living chronicle of everything it has endured. Rest now, let your own memories drift away, as we continue deeper into the quiet world of trees. Trees can send electrical signals. Just like your nervous system, just like the nerves that carry sensation from your hand to your brain, trees have a way of transmitting information from one part of themselves to another. It's slow, much slower than animal nerves, but it's real. When an insect begins chewing on a leaf at the top of a tree, something remarkable happens. Within minutes, sometimes within seconds, leaves at the bottom of the tree, leaves that haven't been touched, begin producing defensive chemicals. Bitter compounds. Toxic proteins. Things that make the tree less pleasant to eat. How did those distant leaves know to start defending themselves? Electrical signals. Traveling through the tree's tissues. Carried by ions, charged particles, moving through water-filled tubes in the wood. The damaged leaf sends out an alarm, a pulse of electrical activity, and it spreads. Down the branch. Into the trunk. Out to other branches. The whole tree knows. The whole tree responds. It's not a nervous system, not exactly, but it serves the same purpose. Communication. Coordination. A way for one part of an organism to tell the other parts, we are under attack. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Trees can precisely target their defenses. They don't just flood their entire body with defensive chemicals. That would be wasteful, expensive in terms of energy. Instead, they produce those chemicals primarily in the areas that are being attacked, and in the areas most likely to be attacked next. If caterpillars are eating leaves on the south side of the tree, the south side gets the strongest chemical defense. The north side, relatively untouched, produces less. The tree is strategic. It's efficient. It puts its resources exactly where they're needed most. This requires sensing where the damage is, processing that information, making decisions about resource allocation, all without a brain, all without conscious thought. And yet, it happens. Every day. In every forest. Let yourself drift with that thought. The idea that thinking might not require a brain, that intelligence might be written in sap and wood. When a tree is pushed over, leaning at an angle because of wind or unstable ground or the weight of snow, it doesn't just accept its new position. It fights back. It straightens itself. This is done through something called reaction wood. On the underside of a leaning branch, or on one side of a tilted trunk, the tree produces wood that's different. In conifers, it's called compression wood, and it pushes. In broadleaf trees, it's called tension wood, and it pulls. Either way, the result is the same. Over months and years, the tree slowly, incrementally, pulls itself back toward vertical. You can see the evidence of this in old trees. A trunk that curves gently, showing the history of its corrections. It leaned once, and it fixed itself. It's still fixing itself, still pushing against gravity, still refusing to fall. This is active. This is intentional. The tree senses which way is up, using gravity-sensing cells, and it grows accordingly. It knows where it is in space, and it knows where it wants to be, and it does the work to get there. Breathe deeply, feel your own body relaxing, releasing, as the tree releases its tension, slowly, over years. Trees have something called phenotypic plasticity. That's a technical term, but it means something beautiful. It means a tree can reshape itself based on its environment, can become a different version of itself, without changing its genes. The same seed, planted in two different places, will grow into two very different trees. One in a windy location might grow short and thick, with a stout trunk and branches that bend rather than break. One in a protected valley might grow tall and straight, reaching for light, not needing to brace against storms. Same DNA, different form. The tree reads its environment, and it builds the body it needs for that particular place. It's not locked into one design. It's flexible, adaptive, creative. And even within a single tree, there can be variation. Intra-tree genetic mosaics, they're called. Sometimes, a mutation happens in one cell in a growing shoot. That cell divides, and all its daughter cells carry the mutation. Eventually, that one mutated cell becomes an entire branch. A branch that's genetically different from the rest of the tree. You might see this as a branch with slightly different leaves, different bark color, different growth pattern. It's still part of the same tree, still connected, sharing the same root system. But genetically, it's unique. The tree has become a patchwork. A collection of slightly different versions of itself, all growing together, all cooperating. One tree, many identities. Unity and diversity in the same organism. Let your mind rest on that image. One being, many parts, all working together. Trees are not passive. They do not simply stand and accept what the world gives them. They count. They remember. They communicate. They defend themselves strategically. They sense gravity and straighten themselves. They reshape their bodies to match their circumstances. They are mosaics of variation, living libraries of experience, electrical networks wrapped in bark. They are so much more than we ever imagined. Let yourself sink even deeper now, into softness, into comfort, as we travel beneath the surface, down into the soil, into the darkness, into a world you cannot see, but that changes everything. What if I told you that trees are not alone? What if I told you that beneath your feet, beneath every forest floor, there is a network? A web of connection, so vast, so intricate, that it makes the internet look simple. They call it the Wood Wide Web. And it is real. Beneath the ground, stretching between the roots of trees, connecting oak to pine to birch to maple, are fungi. Not the mushrooms you see, those are just the fruiting bodies, the tiny visible part. The real organism, the real fungus, is underground. Threads called hyphae, thinner than the finest human hair, spreading through the soil like cobwebs, like lace, like neural networks made of living tissue. And these threads, These fungal highways connect to tree roots. They wrap around them. They penetrate them. They fuse with them. And through this connection, this partnership, trees that appear separate, standing alone in the forest, are actually touching, communicating, sharing. Let that settle over you. The loneliness you might have imagined, the isolated tree, it doesn't exist. Every tree in a forest is part of a community. These fungal partners actively trade with trees. It's not a simple relationship. It's not one-sided. It's a marketplace, an exchange. The tree produces sugars through photosynthesis, food made from sunlight and air and water, and it sends some of that sugar down through its roots, out to the fungi. The fungi cannot photosynthesize. They need the tree's sugar to survive. But the fungi have something the tree needs too. Those thread-like hyphae spread through the soil far more extensively than any root system ever could. They're finer, more delicate, able to penetrate tiny spaces between soil particles. And they're efficient at gathering nutrients. Nitrogen, phosphorus, minerals the tree cannot easily reach. So the fungi collect these nutrients, and they trade them to the tree, in exchange for sugar. Carbon for nitrogen. Energy for minerals. A perfect partnership. Both organisms giving what they have in abundance, receiving what they desperately need. Breathe slowly now, in and out, as we go even deeper into this underground world. Some fungi form what are called endomycorrhizae. These are fungi that don't just wrap around the roots, they actually enter the root cells. They push through the cell walls, carefully, without killing the cell, and form tiny branching structures inside. Arbuscules, they're called, little trees within trees. Microscopic nutrient exchange hubs. Here, in these impossibly small spaces, molecules pass back and forth. Sugar flowing from tree to fungus. Phosphorus flowing from fungus to tree. The cell membrane wrapped around the fungal structure, creating a massive surface area for exchange. It's elegant, efficient, intimate. The tree allows the fungus inside its own cells. That level of trust, that level of cooperation, took millions of years to evolve. And now it's everywhere. The majority of land plants, including most trees, have these partnerships. They've had them for so long that many trees can't survive without them. They've forgotten how to live alone. And through these fungal networks, trees share resources instead of competing. This is the part that changes everything. This is the revelation that transforms how we see forests. A tree standing in full sunlight, photosynthesizing efficiently, producing more sugar than it needs, will send some of that excess through its roots, into the fungal network, and the fungi will carry it to other trees. Trees standing in shade. Sick trees. Young trees that haven't reached the canopy yet. Trees that are struggling. The strong feed the weak. The healthy support the sick. Not because they're kind, not because they're generous in any emotional sense, but because the forest as a whole is healthier when every tree survives. Because diversity is strength. Because a forest is not a collection of individuals, it's a superorganism. One living system, made of many parts. Let yourself rest in that image, interconnection, support, the strong helping the weak, simply because it works, because it's how life survives. Mother trees feed and protect their young. This is not metaphor. Ecologist Suzanne Samar discovered this through careful research. Large old trees, the giants of the forest, send more resources through the fungal network to their own offspring than to unrelated seedlings nearby. They recognize their own children. Somehow. Perhaps through chemical signals. Perhaps through subtle genetic markers. But they know. And they feed them. A seedling growing in the deep shade of the forest floor, barely surviving on the scraps of light that filter down, receives sugar from its mother. Enough to keep growing. Enough to wait for its chance. When the mother tree eventually falls, when age or storm or disease takes her down, there's an opening in the canopy. Light floods in. And her offspring, the seedlings she's been feeding for years, are ready. Strong enough. Old enough. They shoot upward, racing to fill the gap, to become the next generation of giants. She feeds them. She protects them. She gives them time. And then, she makes space for them. Breathe with me, slow and deep, feel the comfort of that connection, parent and child, even in the silent world of trees. Trees show kin recognition that favors relatives. This isn't limited to mothers and their direct offspring. Trees can recognize siblings. Seedlings from the same parent tree, growing near each other, compete less aggressively than seedlings from different parents. They'll share light more fairly. They'll intertwine roots less invasively. They're still competing, resources are always limited, but there's a softness to it. A reluctance to cause harm. They recognize something in each other. Family. And that recognition changes their behavior. Scientists have tested this in laboratories. Seedlings grown next to siblings versus seedlings grown next to strangers. The siblings are gentler, more cooperative. They grow differently when family is near. How do they know? How does a tree recognize another tree's genetic relationship to itself? We don't fully understand yet. But we know it happens. We can measure it. We can see it in the roots, in the growth patterns, in the chemistry. And through the fungal networks, distress signals travel. When a tree is being attacked by insects, when beetles are boring into its bark or caterpillars are devouring its leaves, it doesn't suffer in silence. It sends out an alarm. Chemical signals, released into the air, but also sent underground, through the roots, into the fungal highway. And neighboring trees receive that signal. They detect it. And they respond. They begin producing defensive chemicals, bitter compounds, toxic proteins, even though they haven't been attacked yet. They're preparing. The alarm from their neighbor has given them time to build their defenses, to be ready when the insects move to the next tree. This is cooperation at a level we never imagined. Trees warning each other. Trees helping each other survive. Let yourself drift now, surrounded by this invisible communication, this underground conversation, happening always, everywhere, beneath your feet. These warnings spread across forests. Multi-species warnings. An oak tree being attacked by beetles will send signals that a nearby pine receives and responds to. Different species, different chemistries, different defenses. But the same basic message: danger is coming, prepare yourself. The fungal network doesn't discriminate. It connects everything. Oak and pine and maple and fir, all plugged into the same communication system. All sharing the same information. The forest as a whole becomes more resilient, because knowledge spreads, because no tree faces a threat alone. But not all relationships are purely beneficial. Commensal relationships can turn parasitic. Sometimes, a fungus that has been a helpful partner for decades will shift. Perhaps the tree becomes weak. Perhaps resources become scarce. And the fungus, which was trading fairly, begins to take more than it gives. It's still connected, still in partnership, but the balance has shifted. The fungus draws sugar from the tree, but provides fewer nutrients in return. The tree is being drained, slowly, imperceptibly, until it weakens further. And sometimes, rarely, a tree will cut off a fungal partner. It will seal off the connection, produce chemicals that kill the fungal threads, protect itself. Even partnerships, even ancient alliances, can end. The tree does what it must to survive. But these are exceptions. The vast majority of the time, the wood wide web functions. It connects. It shares. It communicates. It creates a forest that is more than the sum of its parts. Beneath your feet, beneath every forest, there is a conversation. Silent, chemical, electrical, flowing through fungal threads and root tips. Trees talking to trees. Species helping species. Parents feeding children. Neighbors warning neighbors. The forest is not a collection of individuals competing for light and water. It is a community, a network, a family, connected underground in ways we're only beginning to understand. Continue breathing, slowly, deeply, as the forest around you comes even more alive. As we discover that trees are not silent, not still, not passive. They are sensing, responding, defending, communicating in languages we're only now learning to hear. Trees can smell and taste attackers. Think about that for a moment. A tree has no nose, no tongue, no taste buds. And yet, when an insect lands on a leaf and begins to chew, the tree knows. It detects the chemicals in the insect's saliva. It recognizes them. Different insects have different chemical signatures, and the tree can tell them apart. A caterpillar tastes different from a beetle. An aphid tastes different from a grasshopper. And the tree, through receptor proteins in its cells, can sense these differences. It's tasting, reading the chemical identity of its attacker. And then, it responds accordingly. Because different insects require different defenses. What makes a caterpillar sick might not bother a beetle. What repels an aphid might attract its predators. So the tree tailors its response, customizes its defense, produces exactly the right chemicals to fight exactly this threat. This is sophistication. This is precision. This is a tree knowing its enemy. Let that sink in as you breathe, in and out, the tree tasting danger and responding. But the tree doesn't keep this information to itself. Trees use scents to warn other trees. When that first tree detects an attack, when it tastes caterpillar saliva or beetle enzymes, it releases volatile organic compounds into the air. Scents. Invisible messages, carried on the breeze. And downwind, other trees detect these airborne warnings. Their leaves have receptors, chemical sensors, that can pick up these molecules even at incredibly low concentrations. A few parts per billion. Almost nothing. Almost undetectable. But enough. The warned trees begin producing defensive chemicals before the insects even arrive. They're preparing. Arming themselves. Thanks to the warning from their neighbor, they have time. And that time, those few minutes or hours of advance notice, can mean the difference between minor damage and complete defoliation. The forest is talking. In chemicals. In scents. In warnings whispered on the wind. Breathe in, imagine those messages floating through the air, invisible, constant, a conversation in molecules. Trees use tannins as chemical armor. You know tannins, even if you don't realize it. They're what makes tea bitter. What makes red wine dry your mouth. What turns water brown when leaves fall into it. Tannins are everywhere in the plant world, and in trees especially. They're defensive compounds. When a tree produces tannins in its leaves or bark, it becomes less digestible. Harder to eat. The tannins bind to proteins, making them unavailable for nutrition. An insect eating a tannin-rich leaf gets less food value from it. Has to eat more to survive. Grows slower. Becomes more vulnerable to predators. Some trees can increase their tannin levels within hours of detecting an attack. The leaves become more bitter, more astringent, less appealing. And the insects, if they have a choice, will move on. Find a different tree. One that hasn't armed itself yet. Chemical warfare. Silent. Elegant. Effective. Trees also release antimicrobial forest perfumes. Walk into a pine forest on a hot day, and you smell it. That clean, sharp, almost medicinal scent. Those are terpenes. Volatile compounds, floating through the air, and they're not just pleasant to us. They're functional. These compounds are antimicrobial. They kill bacteria. They inhibit fungal growth. A tree releases them constantly, creating a protective atmosphere around itself. A chemical shield, hanging in the air, making it harder for pathogens to establish themselves on bark and leaves. And in a dense forest, with thousands of trees all releasing these compounds, the air becomes saturated. The whole forest smells medicinal. And it is. It's healthier, cleaner, protected by its own collective breath. People have known for centuries that spending time in forests makes you feel better, stronger, calmer. Part of that is breathing in these antimicrobial compounds. Forest bathing, they call it in Japan. Shinrin-yoku. The medicine of the forest, floating in the air, entering your lungs, benefiting you just as it benefits the trees. Let yourself breathe that in now. Imagine clean forest air, healing, protective, surrounding you. Trees can detect subtle electromagnetic cues. This one sounds like science fiction, but it's real. Trees respond to electromagnetic fields. They sense them. Use them. Perhaps for orientation, for knowing which way is which. Perhaps for detecting approaching storms, the electrical charge in the air before lightning strikes. We don't fully understand this yet, but we can measure it. We can see trees responding to electromagnetic changes, altering their growth patterns, their chemistry. They're tuned in to forces we can barely detect, to signals invisible to us. The forest is listening to frequencies we don't hear, to fields we don't feel. And here's something even more startling. Some trees emit ultrasonic screams when stressed. Researchers in Israel recorded trees under drought stress, trees with damaged trunks, and they found sounds. High-pitched, ultrasonic, beyond the range of human hearing. But there, the trees were making noise. Popping sounds, clicking sounds, possibly caused by cavitation, air bubbles forming in the water-conducting vessels when the tree is desperate for moisture. The sound of a tree in pain, a tree crying out. And other organisms might hear this. Insects, animals, even other trees, if they have the right receptors. A sound-based distress signal. A scream in a frequency we never thought to listen for. Let yourself rest with that. The idea that trees might be screaming, and we've been walking through forests in what we thought was silence. When a tree is wounded, when bark is torn or a branch is broken, sap floods the wound immediately. Thick, sticky, resinous. It's not just covering the damage. It's not just a bandage. It's a weapon. The sap drowns invaders. Insects that try to bore into the wound get trapped, stuck, encased in hardening resin. Fungi that try to enter find their growth blocked, sealed off. The sap hardens, creating a protective barrier, and anything caught in it dies there, preserved forever in amber. Walk through a pine forest and you'll see old wounds, glistening with dried resin, sometimes with the tiny bodies of insects still visible inside. The tree's defense turned to stone, evidence of battles fought and won. Rest now, feel the comfort of that protection, the body healing itself, sealing itself, defending itself. Some trees have evolved to need fire. Their cones, their seed pods, are sealed shut with resin. Locked tight. The seeds inside are trapped, cannot be released, cannot germinate, unless fire comes. Fire-triggered cones, waiting for flames. When a wildfire sweeps through, when temperatures rise high enough, the resin melts. The cones open, and thousands of seeds, protected all this time, rain down onto the scorched earth. Onto soil that's been cleared of competing plants. Onto ground enriched with ash. Perfect conditions for germination. The tree uses fire. Plans for it. Needs it. What looks like destruction is actually renewal. The next generation, waiting for the flames. Trees also have touch-sensitive leaf hardening. When wind buffets a tree constantly, when animals brush past it, when anything touches the leaves repeatedly, the tree responds. It makes those leaves tougher, thicker, harder to tear, reinforced. You can test this yourself. Stroke a seedling's leaves every day for a few weeks, and those leaves will become noticeably tougher than the leaves on an identical seedling that's never been touched. The tree has learned that it lives in a rough neighborhood, and it's built itself accordingly. Touch is information. Pressure is data. And the tree uses that data to build the body it needs. Breathe slowly. Feel your own body relaxing, releasing all tension. When under severe attack, trees can trigger hormone-driven growth spurts. If defoliated, if all the leaves are eaten, the tree floods itself with growth hormones. It forces new leaves to sprout rapidly, sometimes within days, using stored energy reserves it was saving for other purposes. Everything devoted to recovery, to replacing what was lost. It's exhausting for the tree. Costly. It might not produce seeds that year. Might not grow any taller. All resources diverted to one goal. Survive. Replace the leaves. Get back to photosynthesis. But it works. The tree that looked dead, stripped bare, suddenly greens again. Bounces back. Refuses to die. This is resilience. This is determination. This is life, refusing to give up. The forest feels alive now, doesn't it? Trees that smell and taste. Trees that scream in frequencies we can't hear. Trees that warn each other. Trees that harden themselves through touch. Trees that flood wounds with drowning sap. Trees that wait for fire. Trees that custom build their defenses. Trees that refuse to die. Not silent. Not still. Not passive. Alive. Sensing. Responding. Defending. Communicating. Fighting. Surviving. Every forest is a battlefield and a community. Every tree is a warrior and a neighbor. Every moment is filled with signals we cannot see, sounds we cannot hear, conversations in chemistry and electricity and scent. You are surrounded by this hidden life, this secret complexity, this ancient intelligence woven into wood and leaf. Let yourself settle even deeper now, into comfort, into rest, as we explore something beautiful. Something that reveals a fundamental truth about life. Trees don't survive alone. They never have. They can't. And so, they've made alliances, partnerships, friendships that stretch across kingdoms of life, from the invisible to the mighty. In the savannas of Africa, where the sun beats down relentlessly and herbivores roam in vast herds, acacia trees have found a solution to a difficult problem. How do you defend yourself when you're delicious and everything wants to eat you? The answer is to hire bodyguards. Acacia trees house bodyguard ants. The tree grows special structures, hollow thorns, large and swollen, perfect little chambers. And inside these thorns, ant colonies make their homes. Thousands of ants, living inside the tree, protected from the elements, safe from predators. But this is not charity. The ants pay rent. The tree provides housing, and also food, tiny nutritious nodules that grow at the tips of leaves, protein-rich, made specifically for the ants. In return, the ants patrol. They swarm over every branch, every leaf, constantly searching. And when a giraffe comes browsing, when its long tongue reaches out to strip the leaves, the ants attack. They bite. They sting. They swarm into the giraffe's nostrils and eyes and mouth. And the giraffe, huge as it is, backs away. Moves on. Finds a different tree. One without bodyguards. The tree feeds the ants. The ants protect the tree. A bargain struck millions of years ago, and honored still, every day, in every acacia forest. Breathe slowly now, in and out. Imagine those tiny guardians, fierce, loyal, protecting their home. But the ants do more than just defend. These defensive ant colonies prune rivals. If a vine begins growing on the acacia, climbing up toward the canopy, competing for light, the ants attack it. They chew through the vine's stem. They strip its leaves. They kill it before it can threaten their tree. If another plant begins growing too close, its branches touching the acacia, the ants cross over. They destroy it. They create a dead zone around their tree. Clear space. No competition allowed. The acacia stands alone, not because it's isolated, but because its army keeps it that way. The ants are gardeners. Bodyguards and gardeners both. Shaping the landscape around their tree, ensuring it has everything it needs: light, space, safety. This is cooperation at a level that blurs the line between separate organisms. Where does the tree end and the ant colony begin? They cannot survive without each other. They are, in a sense, one organism, one system. Tree and ant, together. Let that thought settle over you. Partnership so deep it becomes identity. In wetter climates, in places where nitrogen is scarce in the soil, alder trees have found a different kind of partner. Alder trees partner with nitrogen-fixing bacteria. These bacteria live inside the tree's roots, in special nodules, little swellings that house entire bacterial colonies. The bacteria have a gift. They can take nitrogen from the air, from the spaces between soil particles, and convert it into a form that plants can use. Ammonia. Nitrates. The building blocks of proteins in DNA. Most organisms cannot do this. The chemistry is too difficult, too energy-intensive. But these bacteria can. And they do it, inside the alder's roots, and share the nitrogen with the tree. In exchange, the tree provides sugar, carbohydrates, energy. The bacteria cannot photosynthesize. They need the tree's food. So the tree feeds the bacteria. The bacteria provide nitrogen. And the alder grows in places where other trees struggle, in poor soil, in disturbed ground, in places where nitrogen is desperately scarce. It thrives because it's not alone. Because it has allies living inside its very roots. And when alder leaves fall, when they decompose, they release that nitrogen into the soil, enriching it, making it better for other plants. The alder improves the world around it, simply by housing its bacterial partners. Breathe deeply, feel yourself supported, nourished, by invisible helpers. Some partnerships are so specific, so intricate, that neither partner can exist without the other. Fig trees and fig wasps depend on each other completely. Absolutely. The fig tree cannot reproduce without the wasp. The wasp cannot reproduce without the fig tree. They are locked together in a dance that has lasted 50 million years. Here's how it works. A fig is not actually a fruit, not the way an apple is a fruit. It's an inside-out flower. A hollow chamber, lined with hundreds of tiny flowers, all facing inward. Unreachable from the outside. A female fig wasp, small enough to fit through a pinhole, enters the figure. She crawls through a tight passage, losing her wings in the process. She will never fly again. Inside, she pollinates the flowers, laying her eggs in some of them, pollinating others. And then she dies. Trapped inside. Her purpose fulfilled. The eggs hatch. The larvae develop, feeding on the fig tissue. Male wasps emerge first. They mate with the females, and then they chew an exit tunnel. They die without ever leaving the figure. The females, now pregnant, crawl out through the tunnel, carrying pollen from this fig tree, and they fly to find another figure. Another inside-out flower. Another sealed chamber where they will lay their eggs and die. One species of fig. One species of wasp. Perfectly matched. Perfectly dependent. Neither can survive without the other. Let yourself rest in that perfect interdependence, that absolute trust, that ancient partnership. It's not just insects and bacteria. Shrub-tree fungal alliances boost survival in harsh environments. In the understory of forests, where light is scarce and competition is fierce, small shrubs form partnerships with fungi, and those same fungi connect to the canopy trees above. The shrubs cannot reach the sun. They live in perpetual shade. But they're connected, through fungal networks, to the giants above. And those giants share. They send sugar down through the network, to the fungi, which pass it along to the shrubs. Enough to keep them alive. Enough to let them reproduce. Enough to maintain a population in the understory, waiting for their chance. And when a big tree falls, when light floods in, those shrubs are ready. They've survived because the canopy trees kept them alive. Shared with them. Supported them. The forest supports its understory. The strong feed the weak. The alliance benefits everyone. In coastal regions, where land meets sea, mangroves create habitats for marine life. These trees grow in salt water, their roots in the ocean, their leaves in the air. They should not be able to survive. Salt water kills most plants. But mangroves have adapted. They filter the salt, excrete it through their leaves, survive where others cannot. And their roots, tangled and submerged, create nurseries. Safe places where fish can spawn. Where juvenile fish can hide from predators. Where crabs and shrimp and countless other creatures find shelter. The mangroves are not trying to help these animals. They're just being trees. But in being trees, in this particular way, in this particular place, they create a world. An ecosystem. Hundreds of species, dependent on the mangrove's presence. Remove the mangroves, and the fish populations collapse. The shrimp disappear. The birds that feed on them vanish. The mangrove is a keystone, a foundation. Everything else builds on it. Breathe slowly, feel the weight of that responsibility, that importance, that central role. And here's something wonderful. Different tree species host unique neighborhoods. An oak tree, standing in a forest, will have different species of fungi connecting to its roots, different insects living in its bark, different lichens growing on its branches, different birds nesting in its crown, than a pine tree standing right next to it. Each tree species creates its own community, its own ecosystem, its own collection of dependent organisms. Walk through a diverse forest with many tree species, and you're walking through many different neighborhoods. Each tree, a unique habitat. Each species, supporting a different cast of characters. This is why diversity matters. A forest of only one tree species supports far fewer organisms overall. But a forest with 10 tree species, 20, 50, becomes exponentially richer, more complex, more resilient. Every tree is a world, and every forest is a collection of worlds, overlapping, interacting, supporting each other. You are surrounded by partnerships, alliances, mutual dependencies. Nothing in the forest survives alone. The tree needs the fungus, needs the bacteria, needs the insect, needs the bird, needs the tree. Circles within circles. Webs within webs. Everything connected. Everything supporting everything else. This is the truth of life. Not competition. Not survival of the fittest in some brutal solitary struggle. But cooperation. Alliance. Partnership. The strong supporting the weak. The specialists helping the generalists. The bodyguards protecting their hosts. The hosts feeding their guardians. Life helping life. Because together we survive. Alone we perish. Let yourself drift now, floating as we pull back. Zoom out. See the forest not just as individual trees, not just as partnerships and networks, but as something larger still. As forces that shape the entire planet. As engineers, working on a scale almost too vast to comprehend. Trees act as giant air conditioning systems. Think about a hot summer day. You step from the open street into the shade of a tree, and instantly, it's cooler. You feel it on your skin. The temperature drops. Not just from the shade, though that helps, but from something else. Something the tree is actively doing. The tree is breathing. Through tiny pores in its leaves, stomata, it's releasing water vapor. Transpiration, it's called. The tree pulls water from the soil, draws it up through its roots, up through its trunk, and releases it as vapor from its leaves. Constantly. Gallons and gallons of water, every day, evaporating into the air. And evaporation cools. Just like sweat cools your body. The tree is sweating, cooling the air around it. A single large tree can transpire hundreds of gallons of water in a day. And that much evaporation cools the surrounding air by several degrees. not just in the shade of the tree, but in the entire area around it. Now imagine a forest. Thousands of trees. Millions of trees. All transpiring. All cooling. A forest can reduce local temperatures by 10 or 15 degrees compared to a nearby city or open field. Forests create their own climate, their own weather. They are living air conditioners, running on sunlight, cooling the planet, one leaf at a time. Breathe slowly, feel that coolness, that gentle regulation, the forest breathing, keeping the world temperate. Trees are powerful natural water pumps. We've talked about transpiration, but let's follow the water more carefully. It falls as rain, hits the leaves. Some of it runs down the trunk. Some drips to the ground. It soaks into the soil. And the tree's roots, spreading wide, spreading deep, drink it in. The water travels up the trunk, pulled by the evaporation happening at the leaves. It's a pump with no moving parts, no engine, just physics, capillary action, cohesion, tension. Water molecules pulling other water molecules in an unbroken column from root to leaf, sometimes hundreds of feet straight up. And then it's released into the air, where it rises, cools, condenses, forms clouds, falls again as rain, perhaps miles away, perhaps over the forest again. Perhaps over farmland that desperately needs it. Forests pump water inland from the oceans. They pull moisture from the air. They create rainfall far from the coasts. The Amazon rainforest generates much of its own rain. The trees transpire so much water that it rises, forms clouds, rains down again. The forest waters itself, and it waters the regions downwind. Trees, moving water across continents, redistributing the ocean's moisture, making life possible in places that would otherwise be desert. Let that image settle. Trees as vast pumps, moving water from earth to sky, from ocean to inland, sustaining everything. And when the rain does fall, the roots act like living sponges that prevent floods. Instead of running off immediately, rushing down hillsides, eroding soil, overwhelming rivers, the rain soaks into the forest floor, into the leaf litter, into the soil. And the tree roots, permeating that soil, hold it in place, create channels, create structure. The water is absorbed, slowly released, filtered through soil particles, through the vast underground network of roots and fungi. It enters the tree, enters the groundwater, enters streams, gradually, gently. No sudden floods, no erosion, no catastrophe. Remove the trees, and the water behavior changes immediately. Rain rushes off bare soil, carries topsoil with it, floods valleys, dries out quickly. The land becomes unstable, vulnerable. But with trees, the water is managed, stored, released slowly. The forest is a reservoir, a buffer, a protection against the extremes of drought and deluge. Breathe deeply, feel that stability, that patient management of water. the forest holding everything in balance. Forests massively buffer climate change. We're releasing carbon into the atmosphere, carbon that was buried for millions of years as coal and oil, and it's warming the planet. Everyone knows this. But trees are fighting back. Every tree is pulling carbon dioxide from the air, taking that carbon, incorporating it into wood, trunk, branch, root, leaf. A tree is made of air, made of carbon dioxide, transformed by sunlight into solid matter. A forest is carbon, standing upright. Carbon locked away, removed from the atmosphere, stored safely for decades, for centuries, for as long as the tree stands. The world's forests collectively store hundreds of billions of tons of carbon. They remove billions more each year. They are slowing climate change, buying us time, healing the damage we've done, one molecule of CO2 at a time. Without forests, the planet would be warming even faster. The forests are holding the line. Ancient, patient, doing what they've always done, breathing in what we breathe out, maintaining balance. And a single tree can supply oxygen for several people. Through photosynthesis, every tree produces oxygen, releases it into the air, a byproduct of making food from sunlight. One large tree can produce enough oxygen for 2 to 4 people for an entire year. Every breath you take contains molecules that were recently released by a tree. You are breathing tree breath. The tree is breathing your breath. Carbon dioxide flows from you to the tree. Oxygen flows from the tree to you. You are partners, connected, dependent on each other. Every human alive because of trees. Every tree thriving in part because we release the carbon dioxide they need. It's a circle. Ancient, perfect, unbroken. Rest in that circle now, breathing in, breathing out, connected to every tree on Earth. Old trees shape entire ecosystems. An ancient tree, centuries old, is not just bigger than a young tree. It's different. It has deep cavities where birds nest, loose bark where insects hide, a vast root system that stabilizes entire hillsides. Its crown creates microclimates: cool, shaded, humid, places where certain plants can only grow under the protection of an ancient giant. Remove that old tree, and dozens of species lose their habitat. The ecosystem shifts, simplifies, becomes less diverse, less resilient. You cannot replace an old tree with saplings, cannot recreate centuries of accumulated complexity in a few years of growth. Old trees are irreplaceable, keystone organisms, foundations, and we're losing them faster than they can be replaced. Every old tree that falls takes a small world with it. Let yourself feel the weight of that age, that accumulated wisdom, that irreplaceable presence. Tree rings are living climate archives. Cut down a tree, or extract a core sample, and you can read its history. Every year, the tree adds a ring. Wide ring, good year. Lots of rain. Plenty of nutrients. Narrow ring, drought year. stress, struggle. But it's more than that. The chemistry of the wood, the isotopes it contains, record temperature, rainfall, atmospheric composition. A tree that lived through the 1800s contains physical evidence of what the climate was like then. The ratio of carbon isotopes, the density of the wood, the presence of certain trace elements. Scientists extract cores from ancient trees. Trees that have been alive for thousands of years. Bristlecone pines, bald cypresses, ancient kauri trees preserved in bogs. And they read the rings like a book, year by year, century by century, reconstructing climate history with precision no other method can match. Trees remember. They write their history in wood. And we, if we're careful, if we're patient, can read what they've written. Wood forensics reveals ancient histories. By studying tree rings, we can date ancient buildings, Viking ships, medieval cathedrals. We can tell when the wood was cut, where the tree grew, what the climate was like when it lived. We can solve crimes, trace illegal logging, identify smuggled timber by its growth patterns. The rings don't lie. They can't be faked. Each tree, each piece of wood, carries an unalterable record of when and where it grew. And we can look back, farther than written records, farther than human memory. Trees that lived 3,000 years ago tell us about droughts that ended civilizations, climate shifts that changed the course of history. All written in rings, in wood, in the patient accumulation of cellulose and lignin. The trees are historians, record keepers, archives of deep time. Pull back now, see the planet. See the green. The vast forests, temperate and tropical, boreal and rainforest. See them cooling the air, pumping water, preventing floods, storing carbon, producing oxygen, creating habitat, recording history, shaping climate, engineering the entire planet to be livable. We live on a planet made habitable by trees. They maintain the atmosphere we breathe, the water cycle we depend on, the stable climate we need. Remove the forests, and the planet changes, warms, dries, becomes hostile. But the forests are still here, still working, still breathing, still pumping, still cooling, still storing, still protecting. Engineers on a planetary scale, powered only by sunlight, asking nothing in return, giving us everything. You live because trees live. Your breath is their gift. Your water is their work. Your climate is their creation. Continue drifting deeper into rest as we journey now to the edges of possibility, to places where survival seems impossible, where conditions are so extreme, so harsh, that life should not exist. And yet, trees are there, adapted, thriving, masters of the impossible. In the far north, where winter lasts for months and temperatures plunge far below zero, trees have found a way. Needle leaves help trees survive cold climates. Think about a pine needle. Narrow, waxy, dark green. It doesn't look like much, but it's perfect for its purpose. A broad leaf, like an oak or maple leaf, would freeze solid in northern winters. Ice crystals forming inside the cells would tear them apart. Irreparable damage. Death. So northern trees, pines and spruces and firs, have reinvented the leaf. Made it narrow. Reduced its surface area. Coated it with thick wax to prevent water loss, to protect against freezing winds. And here's the remarkable part. Many of these trees keep their needles all winter. They don't drop them in autumn like deciduous trees do. They hold on. Because in the brief northern summer, every day of photosynthesis matters. Having needles ready, the moment the snow melts, gives them a head start. They can begin making food immediately. While deciduous trees are still growing new leaves, the conifers are already working. The needle is not primitive. It's not simple. It's a sophisticated adaptation, allowing trees to survive, to photosynthesize, in some of the harshest climates on Earth. Breathe slowly, imagine the cold, and the tree, perfectly suited, perfectly prepared. In southern swamps, where water stands year-round and oxygen in the soil is scarce, trees face a different problem. Roots need oxygen to function. But waterlogged soil has almost none. The water fills all the spaces, excludes the air. Roots should suffocate. So swamp trees grow needs to breathe. Cypress trees, growing in Louisiana bayous, send up strange vertical structures from their roots. Knobby, woody, rising above the water surface. These are pneumatophores, breathing roots. They're filled with spongy tissue, porous, full of air channels. Oxygen from the air diffuses down through these structures, into the submerged root system below. The tree is snorkeling, extending parts of itself above the water, just to breathe. It looks strange, almost alien, but it works. It allows trees to colonize swamps, to thrive in standing water, to grow where other trees would drown. Let yourself float, like those trees, finding ways to breathe, even when submerged. In deserts, where rain might not fall for months or years, where the surface soil is dust and the sun burns relentlessly, trees still survive. Desert trees tap groundwater over 100 feet deep. Their roots don't spread wide like forest trees. They go down, straight down, drilling through rock if necessary, searching for the water table far below. A mesquite tree in the Sonoran Desert might have roots reaching down 80 feet, 100 feet, more. The roots are longer than the tree is tall. By far. Most of the tree, most of its mass, is underground. Hidden. Reaching desperately for water that fell as rain, years ago, and seeped down, 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 to where it collects in ancient aquifers. The tree above ground might look half dead. Small. Twisted. But below, it's vast. Powerful. Connected to water sources that will never run dry. It has solved the problem of the desert, not by conserving water, but by finding an inexhaustible supply. Rest in that image, roots reaching deep, finding what's hidden, what others cannot reach. Some desert trees take a different approach. Baobabs store massive water reserves. The baobab of Africa, the bottle tree of Australia, these trees have trunks that look swollen, grotesque, unnaturally wide. That's because they are. They're full of water. The trunk is like a tank. Spongy tissue inside can absorb and store thousands of gallons. When rain finally comes, the tree drinks greedily, fills itself, and then, for the long dry season, it lives off its reserves, slowly using that stored water, surviving months without a single drop of rain. Animals know this. In times of drought, elephants will tear open baobab trunks to reach the water inside. The tree can survive this. It regrows, heals, but it gives up some of its precious reserves to save the life of the elephant. An unwilling sacrifice. But the ecosystem survives. The elephant lives. And eventually, will fertilize the soil, will scatter seeds, will help the forest continue. Everything connected. Even in desperation. Even in the harshest desert. In places where wind screams constantly, where gales blow from the ocean or down from mountains, where a rigid tree would snap, wind-resistant trees bend instead of breaking. They grow flexible wood. Lighter. Less dense. More elastic. Their trunks sway. Their branches whip and flex. And they survive storms that would destroy a stiffer tree. Mangroves in coastal areas. Willows near rivers. Trees on exposed mountainsides. They've all learned the same lesson. Rigidity is death. Flexibility is survival. Bend with the force. Move with it. Don't fight. And when the wind passes, spring back. Undamaged. Ready for the next storm. This is wisdom. Not just for trees. For anyone trying to survive forces beyond their control. Bend. Flex. Don't break. Breathe, and let yourself be flexible, yielding, surviving. In the poorest soils, acidic bogs, sandy barrens, rocky slopes, where nutrients are desperately scarce, certain trees thrive. Nutrient-poor soil specialists thrive without rivals. Not because they're better at gathering nutrients, but because they need less. They grow slowly. Build lean bodies. Make do with almost nothing. And because they can survive here, they face no competition. The fast-growing trees, the aggressive competitors, can't establish themselves. They need rich soil. They need abundant nutrients. So they stay away. And the specialists, the pines on sandy soil, the black spruce in acidic bogs, they have these places to themselves. Poverty has become an advantage. Harshness has become protection. They've turned their weakness into a niche no one else can fill. In tropical wetlands, where water and air meet, some trees have evolved remarkable structures. Wetland nematophores channel oxygen directly to submerged roots. These are similar to cypress knees, but more elaborate. More sophisticated. Finger-like projections. Sometimes thousands of them around a single tree. Each one, a tiny snorkel. Each one channeling precious oxygen down to the roots drowning in mud. The tree looks like it's standing on stilts, on fingers, on a strange forest of woody projections. But every one serves a purpose. Every one is breathing for the tree. In fire-prone ecosystems, where lightning strikes and dry seasons make wildfires inevitable, some trees have evolved incredible defenses. Fire-resistant bark shields ancient trees from flames. Bark several inches thick, spongy, corky, poor at conducting heat, acting as insulation. A wildfire sweeps through. The grasses burn. Shrubs are consumed. Young trees die. But the old giants, the ones with the thick bark, survive. Their outer layers char-blacken. But inside, the living tissue remains cool, protected, undamaged. And when the fire passes, when the ash settles, these ancient survivors still stand. Scarred, blackened, but alive. Sequoias and redwoods have perfected this. Their bark can be a foot thick. They've survived fires for thousands of years. Each fire leaves a mark, a scar, but doesn't kill. The tree remembers every fire in the patterns of char on its trunk, but continues growing, continues living. And some trees don't just survive fire, they depend on it. Serotinous cones depend on fire to release their seeds. These cones stay closed for years, decades even, glued shut with resin. The seeds inside, trapped, waiting, until fire comes. The heat melts the resin. The cones open. Seeds rain down onto the scorched earth, into soil cleared of competition, enriched with ash, perfect for germination. The next generation, born from fire, needing fire, using what destroys others as the trigger for their own beginning. Life doesn't just survive extremes. It uses them, incorporates them, needs them. And here's something beautiful. Species diversity explodes near the equator. In the tropics, a single acre of rainforest might contain more tree species than exist in all of Canada. Hundreds of species, growing together. Each one slightly different. Each one adapted to a slightly different niche. More sunlight, more warmth, more consistent rainfall. These conditions allow more specialization, more diversity, more experimentation. The tropics are not just richer in trees, they're laboratories of evolution, testing grounds, where new strategies emerge, where the possibilities of what a tree can be expand endlessly. From the frozen tundra to the equatorial rainforest, from waterlogged swamps to bone-dry deserts, from windswept coasts to fire-ravaged plains, trees have conquered every environment, adapted to every extreme, found ways to survive, to thrive, in conditions that seem impossible. They bend. They breathe through knees. They drill for water. They store reserves. They insulate themselves. They wait for fire. They grow slowly on nothing. They explode into diversity when given abundance. They are masters of adaptation, survivors of extremes. Proof that life finds a way. Always. Everywhere. You are like them. Adaptable. Resilient. Capable of surviving conditions you never expected to face. Capable of thriving in places you thought were too harsh. You bend. You breathe. You reach deep for hidden resources. You store what you need for hard times. You survive the fires. And you grow exactly as you need to be, for exactly where you are. Let yourself drift into wonder now, into beauty, into the sheer strangeness of what trees can be. We've talked about survival, adaptation, intelligence. Now, let's simply look. Let's witness the impossible made real. The beautiful made strange. The familiar made magical. Imagine a tree shedding its bark. Not in dull brown flakes. Not in quiet strips of gray. But in colors. Vivid colors. The rainbow eucalyptus sheds bark in vivid colors. Green. Orange. Purple. Blue. Red. All at once. Streaking down the trunk in vertical rivers of color. As the outer bark peels away, the inner bark is revealed. Fresh. Bright green at first. Then as it ages, as it's exposed to air and light, it changes. Deepens. Becomes orange. Then red. Then purple. Then brown. Multiple layers, aging at different rates, creating a patchwork. A painting. A tree that looks like it was decorated by an artist with a wild imagination. But this is real. This is natural. This tree grows in the Philippines, in Indonesia, in Papua New Guinea, and it's breathtaking. A living piece of art. Proof that nature doesn't just solve problems. It creates beauty. For no reason. Just because it can. Breathe slowly. Imagine standing before that tree. Those colors, that impossible beauty. Some trees defend themselves with elegance. Others, with brutality. The devil's walking stick grows spiraling thorns all along its trunk and branches. Not small thorns. Not subtle prickles. Massive spikes. Sharp. Hard. Spiraling around the trunk like a staircase of daggers. Touch this tree, and you bleed. Climb it, impossible. Even brushing against it, tears fabric, tears skin. It is armored like nothing else. A tree that says clearly, stay away. I am not for you. I am not gentle. And yet birds nest in it. Protected by those very thorns. Safe from predators that cannot navigate that maze of spikes. The tree's defense becomes a sanctuary for those small enough, careful enough, to live among the thorns. Beauty and danger. Protection and threat. All wrapped together. Let yourself feel that contradiction, that complexity, as you drift deeper. Some trees don't grow up. They grow out. The banyan tree spreads across acres with prop roots. It starts like any other tree. A seed. A trunk. Branches. But then, something remarkable happens. The branches send down roots, aerial roots, long dangling, reaching for the ground. When those roots touch soil, they thicken, harden, become new trunks, supporting the branch above. And the branch, now supported by multiple trunks, spreads wider, sends down more roots, which become more trunks, which support more branches, which send down more roots. One tree becomes a forest, hundreds of trunks, all connected, all part of the same organism. You can walk through a banyan, winding between its trunks, and forget you're inside a single tree. It looks like a grove, a cluster, but it's one individual, spreading across acres, creating its own cathedral of trunks and branches and shadows. There are banyans in India that cover several acres, thousands of prop roots, tens of thousands of square feet of shade. One tree that looks like a forest, one seed that became a world. Rest in that expansion, that growth, that refusal to be contained. Some trees are so massive, so hollow, that they've been used as homes. Baobabs can house entire rooms inside their trunks. In Africa, in Australia, ancient baobabs with trunks 30 feet across have been carved out. Not killed. Still living. Still growing. But hollow enough, wide enough, to fit rooms inside. There are baobabs that have been used as prisons, as post offices, as pubs. People living and working inside a living tree. The tree continues growing around them, adding new rings on the outside. While inside, humans go about their lives, protected, sheltered, living literally inside a tree. The tree doesn't seem to mind. It has so much mass, so much living tissue on the outside, that the hollow interior doesn't threaten it. It stands. It grows. It houses its strange human inhabitants. And it lives for thousands of years. Imagine that, a tree is a home, a dwelling, a living structure that breathes, that grows, that shelters you. Some trees break all the rules. Joshua trees lack traditional growth rings. Most trees add one ring per year. Count the rings, know the age. Simple, universal. But not Joshua trees. They're monocots, related to yucca, to agave. They grow differently. No rings. No clear annual pattern. Just strange fibrous wood that adds mass irregularly, unpredictably. You cannot tell how old a Joshua tree is by cutting it open. Scientists have to use radiocarbon dating, chemical analysis. It's the only way. Some Joshua trees that look modest turn out to be hundreds of years old. Others that look ancient are younger. They keep their secrets. Growing in the Mojave Desert. Twisted. Sculptural. Alien-looking. Each one unique. No two the same. They look like they belong on another planet. And in a way, they do. They're so different from other trees, so strange in their growth, that they redefine what a tree can be. breathe, and let strangeness wash over you, the beauty of the unfamiliar. On an island in the Arabian Sea, where rain almost never falls but fog rolls in from the ocean, dragon's blood trees capture fog from the air. Their canopy, dense and umbrella-shaped, acts like a net. Fog condenses on the leaves. Droplets form. Roll down the branches, down the trunk, into the soil around the roots. The tree harvests water from clouds, from mist, from moisture that never becomes rain. And it survives, thrives, in one of the driest places on earth, simply by being shaped perfectly to catch what others cannot. And when the tree is cut, it bleeds. Red sap, deep crimson, dragon's blood, it's called. Used for centuries as dye, as medicine, as incense. The tree, bizarre in shape, drinking fog, bleeding red. Like something from mythology, but real. One of the oldest trees on Earth is also one of the most unchanged. Ginkgo leaves are unchanged for 270 million years. Fossils from the age of dinosaurs show ginkgo leaves identical to the ones growing today. Exactly the same shape, the same fan, the same veins. This tree watched the dinosaurs rise, watched them die, watched mammals emerge, watched continents drift, watched ice ages come and go. And through it all, it never changed, never evolved, never needed to. It found a form that worked, and kept it for hundreds of millions of years. Living fossils, they're called. The last remnant of an ancient lineage. All other species in its family, extinct. But the ginkgo survives. In China. Planted in cities worldwide. Unchanged. Unchanging. A window into deep time. A messenger from an ancient world. Let yourself rest in that timelessness, that endurance, that refusal to change what works. Some trees leave their mark on the forest floor in the strangest ways. Sweet gum seed pods texture forests with spiky balls. You've probably stepped on them. Round, covered in hard spikes. They crunch underfoot, roll unexpectedly, scattered everywhere under sweet gum trees in autumn. Each spike was a seed capsule. Each ball contained dozens of seeds. Released, blown away, leaving just the spiky shell. Beautiful in its own geometric way. Medieval. Like tiny maces. Like weapons made of wood. But just seed pods. Just the tree's way of spreading its offspring. Children collect them. Artists use them in crafts. And the trees keep dropping them. Year after year. Carpeting the ground with these strange sculptural remnants. Some trees have bark so smooth, you want to touch it. American beech has smooth elephant skin bark. Gray. Silky. Unbroken by deep furrows or rough plates. Just smooth. Like skin. Like the bark never grew up, never developed the roughness of most mature trees. People carve initials into it. The smoothness, the softness, makes it irresistible. And the scars stay. forever. The tree grows around them, expands them. Initials carved decades ago, now stretched and distorted by years of growth. A record of everyone who passed by, who stopped, who touched. The tree becomes a guest book, a living memorial, marked by human hands, still growing, still smooth where it hasn't been carved, still beautiful. And some trees peel in ways that make you want to touch them, to feel them. Paperbark cherry peels in silky curls. The bark doesn't flake, doesn't crack. It curls, rolls back in thin translucent sheets. Like paper, like silk, copper-colored, glowing. Especially in winter sunlight. You can lift these curls gently. Feel how thin they are, how delicate, how they catch the light. The tree renews itself constantly, shedding old bark, revealing new, always fresh, always glowing, always beautiful. A tree that feels like art, like sculpture, like something made deliberately, to be touched, to be admired, to bring joy. These trees, these strange and beautiful variations, remind us that nature is not utilitarian. It's not just about survival, not just about efficiency. There is beauty for beauty's sake. Strangeness for strangeness' sake. Variety because variety is possible. Rainbow bark, spiraling thorns, spreading banyans, hollow giants, ringless wood, fog-drinking dragons, ancient unchanged leaves, spiky seed balls, elephant skin, peeling silk. The world of trees is endlessly creative, endlessly surprising, endlessly beautiful. Let yourself sink into deep time now, into ages so vast they're hard to comprehend, into the realm of the ancient ones, the survivors, the witnesses. Trees that have seen more, lived longer, endured more than seems possible. Some trees live for tens of thousands of years. Not hundreds, not thousands, tens of thousands. There is a clonal colony of quaking aspen in Utah, called Pando. One organism, one root system, sending up thousands of trunks. And scientists estimate it has been alive for 80,000 years. Possibly longer. 80,000 years. That tree was alive during the last ice age. It watched glaciers advance and retreat. It saw mastodons and saber-toothed cats. It predates human civilization. Predates agriculture. Predates writing. Predates everything we consider history. And it's still growing. Still sending up new shoots. Still photosynthesizing. Still spreading. One individual, older than almost anything else alive, quietly growing in a Utah mountainside. Breathe slowly. Try to grasp that span of time, 80,000 years, and the tree continues. These clonal trees become vast underground giants. You see the trunks above ground. But that's not the tree. Not really. The real organism is underground. Roots spreading through the soil. Connecting. persisting. Even when the visible trunks die, the root system survives, sends up new trunks, continues. This is a different kind of immortality. Not one trunk living forever, but one organism constantly renewing itself, constantly replacing its parts. The ship of Theseus, made of wood and roots. Is it still the same tree, if every trunk has been replaced 1,000 times? The roots say yes. The DNA says yes. It is one being, one ancient individual, expressing itself in many temporary forms. Let that paradox wash over you. One tree, many trunks, immortal through constant renewal. And here's something counterintuitive. Extreme dryness promotes longevity. You'd think trees would live longer in perfect conditions. Rich soil, plenty of water. But no. The oldest individual trees, the bristlecone pines of California and Nevada, grow in terrible conditions. High altitude, rocky soil, almost no water, harsh winds, short growing seasons. They grow slowly, painfully slowly. One ring might be thinner than a human hair. They're conserving, making do, building dense wood, not rushing. And because they grow so slowly, because conditions are so harsh, they're not attacked by pests. Insects and fungi need water too, need softer wood. The bristlecones are too dry, too dense, too hard. Nothing can eat them. And so they persist. 4,000 years old. 5,000. One tree, named Methuselah, is nearly 5,000 years old. It was a seedling when the pyramids were being built, when Stonehenge was new. And it's still alive, still growing, still adding rings, impossibly thin, but adding them nonetheless. Hardship has given them immortality. Breathe and feel the patience of that, the slow accumulation of years, the refusal to hurry. Most trees don't die of old age. Trees often die from events, not old age. A storm knocks them down. Lightning strikes. Fire. Disease. Drought. Human axes. Something external. Something catastrophic. But the tree itself, if left alone, if protected, could keep growing. Indefinitely. There's no built-in clock. No programmed senescence. No switch that flips and says, time to die. Trees are modular. Every branch is somewhat independent. If one part fails, the rest continues. If the top dies, the bottom survives. The tree can lose half its crown and still live. Still grow. They're not killed by aging. They're killed by the world. And if the world is gentle, if luck holds, they go on. And on. And on. This is different from us. From animals. We age. We wear out. We have expiration dates written into our cells. But trees are different. Trees might be functionally immortal. If only the world would let them be. Rest in that thought. The tree that doesn't age only endures, or doesn't. forests change slowly, invisibly, through processes we're only beginning to understand. Neutral genetic drift shapes forests quietly over millennia. Random mutations accumulate. Not helpful, not harmful, just different. And over thousands of years, those small changes add up. Populations diverge. Not because of selection, not because one variant is better, just because randomness, genetic drift, the slow wandering of DNA through time. Two forests of the same species, separated by a mountain range for 10,000 years, will have different genetic signatures. Not because they adapted to different conditions, just because they drifted apart. Random mutations in one forest that never appeared in the other. And vice versa. The forest is changing, always, even when nothing seems to be happening. Time itself rewrites the code. And sometimes, changes happen in one part of a tree. Modular mutations pass local adaptations down through branches. A mutation in one cell, in a growing bud, creates a branch that's genetically different. Slightly different. That branch might be more resistant to a pest. Might grow faster in shade. Might tolerate drought better. And when that branch produces seeds, it passes on the mutation. Not to the whole tree's offspring. Just to the seeds from that one branch. The tree has become a mosaic. A patchwork. Different branches, experimenting with different genetics. And the most successful branches produce the most seeds. Gradually, over generations, their mutations spread. The tree is its own laboratory, testing variations. Slowly, patiently, over centuries. Let yourself drift, imagining that slow experimentation, that patient testing of possibilities. Sometimes, evolution jumps. Tetraploid hybrids gain instant resilience. Two species hybridize, cross-pollinate. And occasionally, something strange happens. The offspring gets a double set of chromosomes. Instead of 2 copies of each chromosome, it has 4. Tetraploid. This shouldn't work. Usually it's lethal. But sometimes, it creates a super tree. More vigorous. More resilient. Able to tolerate conditions neither parent could. Instant hybrid vigor. Instant new species. In one generation. It's rare. But it happens. And when it does, it can change everything. A new lineage. A new possibility. Evolution in a single leap. But most change is slow. Speciation takes millions of years. For 2 populations to diverge so much that they can no longer interbreed, that they become separate species, takes time. Deep time. Millions of years of separation. Millions of years of different selection pressures. Different mutations. Different drift. The oaks we see today, the pines, the maples, their ancestors were similar to them millions of years ago. Evolution in trees is slow, patient, conservative. They're long-lived. Their generations span decades or centuries. Change accumulates gradually, almost imperceptibly, but it accumulates. And some changes are so ancient, so fundamental, that we forget they were ever innovations. Xylem evolution made trees possible. Xylem, the water-conducting tissue. Tubes of dead cells, stacked end to end, allowing water to flow from roots to leaves, even hundreds of feet up. Before xylem, plants were small, limited to wet places, unable to grow tall. But xylem evolved around 400 million years ago and changed everything. Suddenly, plants could transport water efficiently, could grow tall, could colonize dry land, could become trees. Every tree owes its existence to that ancient innovation, that evolution of water-conducting tissue. Without it, the tallest plants would be knee-high. Forests wouldn't exist. And ancient mutations still shape modern forests. A genetic change that happened 100 million years ago is still present, still functional, still affecting how trees grow, how they respond to stress, how they photosynthesize. The past is not past. It's written into every cell. Every tree carries the history of its lineage. Mutations from the age of dinosaurs, adaptations from ice ages, variations that arose when humans didn't exist, still shaping the forests we walk through today. You are surrounded by time travelers, trees carrying ancient DNA, ancient mutations, ancient innovations. They are living bridges, connecting the deep past to the present. A bristlecone pine, 5,000 years old, began growing before writing was invented, before cities, before agriculture. It has lived through the entire span of recorded human history. Everything we've built, everything we've achieved, happened during that one tree's lifetime. And Pando, 80,000 years old, bridges ice ages, connects us to a world we can barely imagine. A world of megafauna and glaciers. A world before humans reshaped the planet. These trees are witnesses, archives, living records of time we cannot fathom. And they're still here, still growing, still enduring. Proof that life, on a long enough timescale, is almost unstoppable. Feel that now, the weight of time, the patience of trees, the slow accumulation of years upon years upon years. You are so young. Your life is a heartbeat, a blink. But you are connected to this deep time. You breathe air those ancient trees helped create. You walk on soil they've fed with their fallen leaves. You are part of this story, even if your part is brief. Rest in that humility, that perspective. You are small. Your time is short. But you are part of something vast. Something ancient. Something that will continue long after you're gone. The trees will remember. Not you specifically. But they'll remember this time. This era. They'll write it in their rings. In their DNA. In their slow genetic drift. And millennia from now, someone might count those rings. Might read that DNA. And they'll know we were here. In this moment. Part of the story. Let yourself settle now into this final truth. This deepest understanding. We've journeyed through the secret life of trees, from their unlikely beginnings, through their networks and defenses, their partnerships and adaptations, their beauty and their age. And now, we arrive at what it all means. What it reveals. About trees. About forests. About intelligence itself. In the harshest places on Earth, where survival seems impossible, trees form tree cities in harsh places. Not scattered individuals fighting alone, but clusters, communities, growing close together, protecting each other. On windswept mountainsides, trees huddle together. Their combined canopy shields each individual from the worst of the wind. Their roots intertwine. Their branches overlap. Together, they create a microclimate. Warmer, more humid, more protected than any one tree could manage alone. Separate them, and they die. Together, they thrive. The city of trees survives where individuals cannot. This is not competition. This is cooperation, strategy, collective survival. And throughout the forest, forests stabilize themselves through sharing. When one tree has excess resources, it shares. Through the fungal networks, through the wood wide web, sugar flows from the strong to the weak. Nutrients circulate. Information spreads. The forest balances itself. Naturally. Automatically. Without central control. A tree in full sun sends sugar to a tree in shade. A healthy tree supports a sick one. An old tree feeds its offspring. Not because they're altruistic. Not because they're kind. But because the forest as a whole is more stable when resources are distributed. When no tree is allowed to fail completely. When diversity is maintained. This is wisdom. Ancient wisdom. Written into the very structure of how forests work. Breathe slowly, feel that balance, that circulation, that sharing. Healthy forests behave like communities. They have structure, diversity, old trees and young, many species, multiple layers, canopy, understory, shrubs, ground cover, each layer supporting the others, each species filling a role. And the forest as a whole is resilient, resistant to disease, able to recover from disturbance. But a plantation, rows of identical trees, all the same age, all the same species, is fragile, vulnerable. A disease that affects one tree affects them all. There's no diversity to buffer the shock. No old trees to anchor stability. No fungal networks to redistribute resources. It's not a community. It's a crop. And it behaves accordingly. The difference is profound. A community survives. A monoculture struggles. Trees know this. Forests demonstrate it. Every day. In every woodland on Earth. And here's what's remarkable. Trees prioritize survival of the whole over individual advantage. A tree could hoard resources. Could refuse to share through the fungal network. could grow aggressively at the expense of its neighbors. And some do, in the short term. But those trees, those forests, don't last. They collapse, become unstable. The forests that persist, the forests that endure for thousands of years, are the ones where trees share, where cooperation dominates, where the collective good outweighs individual gain. Not because the trees are moral, not because they're making ethical choices, but because it works. Because cooperation is a better survival strategy than competition. This is not sentimentality. This is ecology. This is evolution. Cooperation beats competition. In the long run. Always. Let that truth settle into you. Cooperation as the foundation of survival. When danger comes, forests respond collectively to danger. One tree detects an insect attack, sends chemical signals into the air, underground through fungal networks, and neighboring trees receive the warning. Begin producing defensive chemicals. Prepare themselves. Even trees that haven't been touched yet, even trees of different species. The forest acts as one. Information spreads. Defenses coordinate. The attack is met, not by isolated individuals, but by a unified response. The forest, thinking, responding, protecting itself, as a single entity. This is not metaphor. This is measurable, observable, real. The forest has no brain, no central nervous system, but it processes information, makes coordinated responses, acts collectively. It is, in a very real sense, intelligent. And the old trees anchor memory and stability. They've survived droughts before, insect outbreaks before, fires before. Their wood, their chemistry, their genetics carry that memory. And they share it through their seeds, through the fungal networks, through the resources they provide to younger trees. An old-growth forest, with its ancient giants, is fundamentally different from a young forest. More stable, more resilient, more diverse. Because the old trees hold the forest together, provide continuity. Remember what the young trees have never experienced. Remove the old trees, and the forest forgets. Becomes vulnerable, loses its anchor, its wisdom. Trees quietly record Earth's history in their rings, in their wood. Every drought, every cold year, every volcanic eruption that dimmed the sun, every insect plague, written in the width of rings, in the chemistry of cellulose, in the density of wood. Scientists read these records, reconstruct climate history going back thousands of years, understand how the planet has changed, how life has responded. The trees are historians, archivists, keeping records we're only now learning to read. Every tree is a library. Every forest, an archive of deep time. Breathe and feel the weight of that knowledge, that every tree around you is recording this moment, this year, this climate, in its wood. We've been thinking about forests wrong. Forests are not collections of individual trees, but systems, unified systems, with parts that communicate, that share resources, that respond collectively, that stabilize themselves, that remember. A forest is more like a body than a crowd, more like an organism than a collection. The trees are organs. The fungal networks are circulation systems. The soil microbes are immune cells. The whole thing works together, functions as one. You cannot understand a tree by studying it in isolation. You cannot understand a forest by counting individual trees. You must understand the relationships, the connections, the flows of energy and information, the system itself. This changes everything. How we see trees, how we see forests, how we understand intelligence itself. Because trees reveal intelligence without brains. No neurons, no synapses, no central processing. And yet, they sense their environment, process information, make decisions, communicate, remember, learn, adapt, cooperate. Intelligence might not require a brain, might not require consciousness, might not require anything we traditionally associate with thinking. It might simply require sensing, processing, responding. And trees do all of that, constantly, in ways we're only beginning to understand. What is intelligence, if not the ability to gather information and respond appropriately? Trees do this. Forests do this. They are intelligent, just differently, slowly, chemically, electrically, but intelligent nonetheless. Let that expand your understanding of what thinking can be, of what awareness can be, of what intelligence can be. And remember, life underground shapes life above. Everything we see, the canopy, the trunks, the leaves, is driven by what we cannot see. The roots, the fungi, the bacteria, the vast unseen network beneath our feet. That's where the real action is. That's where information flows, where resources are exchanged, where the forest truly lives. We've been looking at the wrong part, admiring the visible, while the invisible does the real work. The forest is an iceberg, most of it hidden below the surface. What looks still is deeply active. A tree appears motionless, silent, passive. But inside, sap is flowing. Electrical signals are traveling. Chemical reactions are cascading. Genes are switching on and off. Resources are being allocated. Defenses are being marshaled. The tree is intensely active, just slowly, on a time scale we don't naturally perceive. Speed a tree up, and you'd see constant motion, reaching, responding, growing, adjusting. The stillness is an illusion, created by our brief lifespans, our fast metabolisms, our impatience. Trees are not still. They're just slow. And in their slowness, there is wisdom. Breathe slowly, Match your rhythm to theirs. Feel that deep, slow activity, that patient, constant work. Forests are alive in ways we're only beginning to understand. Every year brings new discoveries, new mechanisms, new networks, new behaviors we never imagined. The Wood Wide Web, electrical signaling, ultrasonic emissions, kin recognition, memory, learning. We're not even close to understanding it all. We've barely scratched the surface. The forest keeps its secrets, reveals them slowly. To those patient enough to look, to those willing to listen. What else don't we know? What other marvels are hidden in the wood? What other forms of communication, of cooperation, of intelligence, are we still too ignorant to detect? The forest is teaching us. Slowly. Patiently. If we're willing to learn. And trees have been perfecting survival for 500 million years. 500 million years of evolution. Of trial and error. Of adaptation. Of refinement. They've survived ice ages. Mass extinctions, continent collisions, asteroid impacts, everything the Earth could throw at them. And they're still here, still growing, still evolving, still perfecting their strategies. They are the result of 500 million years of accumulated wisdom. 500 million years of survival knowledge, written into their genes, expressed in their form, demonstrated in their behavior. We've existed as a species for perhaps 300,000 years. We've had agriculture for 10,000, cities for 5,000. And we think we know better than the trees? We think we can improve on 500 million years of tested strategies? The hubris is breathtaking. The trees have so much to teach us. If we'd only listen. If we'd only look. If we'd only slow down and pay attention. Every forest is a conversation. Between trees. Between species. Between organisms we can see and organisms we can't. Chemical conversations. Electrical conversations. Mechanical conversations through touch and pressure. Conversations in the soil. In the air. In the wood itself. Constant dialogue. Constant exchange. Constant communication. The forest is never silent. We just don't have the ears to hear it. Don't have the sensors to detect it. But it's there. Always. A conversation that's been ongoing for millions of years. And every tree is a storyteller. Its rings tell stories of drought and plenty. Its wood tells stories of fire and growth. Its branches tell stories of wind and competition for light. Its roots tell stories of partnership and survival. Its seeds tell stories of dispersal and hope. Read the tree. Learn its language. And it will tell you everything. Where it's been. What it's survived. How it's lived. The tree is an open book. Written in wood and bark and leaf. If you know how to read it. Every ring is a memory. A year lived. A season survived. A moment captured. Preserved forever in wood. The tree remembers. Not consciously. Not the way you remember, but physically, chemically, structurally. The memory is there, in the tissue itself. Touch a tree. You're touching history, touching years, touching memories written in cellulose. The tree carries its past in its body, cannot escape it, cannot forget it, is built from it. Every root is a connection to soil, to fungi, to other trees, to the community. The roots don't just anchor. They don't just gather water. They connect. They communicate. They share. They are the tree's link to everything else. Its integration into the forest. Its membership in the community. Pull up a tree's roots, and you sever its connections. Isolate it. Cut it off from the network. The tree might survive, but it's alone now. Vulnerable. No longer part of the conversation. Every leaf is a decision. Where to allocate resources. How much to invest in defense. How much in growth. When to drop the leaf. When to keep it. The tree makes thousands of decisions every day. Through chemistry. Through gene expression. Through resource allocation. The leaf is not passive. It's an active choice. An investment. A bet on the future. And the tree makes these bets, constantly adjusting, optimizing, surviving. And every forest is alive. Not metaphorically. Not poetically. Actually alive. As a system. As an organism. As a unified whole that senses, responds, remembers, adapts, survives. The forest thinks. Without a brain. The forest communicates. Without words. The forest cooperates. Without negotiation. The forest learns. Without schools. The forest remembers. Without writing. It does all of this through the accumulated behavior of millions of organisms, working together, connected, integrated, functioning as one. This is life. This is intelligence. This is community. This is cooperation. This is survival. This is wisdom. And you are part of it. You breathe the oxygen the forest produces. You drink the water the forest filters. You walk on soil the forest creates. You live in the climate the forest stabilizes. You are connected to every tree on earth. Through the air you breathe, the water you drink, the climate you live in. You are not separate from the forest. You are part of it. Part of the system. Part of the web. Part of the ancient conversation that's been going on for 500 million years. The trees know this. They've always known this. Everything is connected. Everything depends on everything else. Cooperation is survival. Community is strength. The whole is greater than the parts. These are not human values we're projecting onto nature. These are natural truths that nature is revealing to us. If we're wise enough to see them, rest now in that knowledge, that connection, that ancient wisdom. You are held by a system that's older than humanity, wiser than civilization, more patient than empires, more enduring than mountains. The forest will be here long after you're gone, still growing, still communicating, still cooperating, still surviving, still teaching those willing to learn. Sleep now, surrounded by this living intelligence, this patient wisdom, this quiet conversation, this ancient network, this community of communities, this system of systems. Sleep, knowing you are not alone. You are part of something vast, something alive, something that connects every living thing on Earth. The trees are breathing with you, growing with you, surviving with you, connected to you through air, through water, through time, through the simple fact of being alive, together on this one planet. Rest in the arms of the forest, in the wisdom of the trees, in the patience of wood, in the generosity of leaves, in the memory of rings, in the connection of roots. Sleep and dream of forests, of networks, of cooperation, of survival, of 500 million years of accumulated wisdom, all around you, all the time, quietly, patiently, perfectly. Sleep and know that the trees will keep watch, will keep breathing, will keep sharing, will keep connecting, will keep surviving. The forest is alive, and so are you. And together, we endure. Good night, and let the trees carry you gently into sleep. If these facts from the singing sands helped you find a moment of peace, consider subscribing to join our quiet community. Your likes and comments help our channel drift further into the horizon, and sharing this journey with others ensures these stories are never lost to the dark. Thank you for listening.